Okay, let's do this. It is 5:30 Pacific time, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Kendall Perry. I'm going to be your host this evening. So first off, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. I hope you all can hear me okay. If you're having any audio issues, please let us know in the chat box, and we will do our best to troubleshoot with you to make sure that the audio is coming through okay. So before we kick off our session, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping items first. In terms of content, we're scheduled for 60 minutes of content tonight and about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A at the end. That will depend on how many questions we get coming in. So I encourage you to stay on for the entirety of the presentation and into the Q&A so that you can engage live with our presenters. But if it does go long and you have to leave, we totally understand. You can disconnect at any time. We will be sending a recording later this week. Hopefully we'll be getting that out tomorrow or Thursday at the latest. So you will have a full version of this to watch later if you have to leave early. Speaking of Q&A, we'll be looking for your participation throughout the session, so please don't be shy. I see a lot of you typing in the chat box, which is awesome. Thanks for letting us know where you're coming in from. We love to hear from you. There will always be a chat box or a Q&A box somewhere on your screen. So we may pose some questions to you, but you're always welcome to type your comments and questions to us as well. Also, if you have any technical difficulties during the session, you can seek help in any of those boxes. We have a team of people here that are ready to help you. So Taylor's right on point, and he'll help anybody through technical troubleshooting. Okay, with that out of the way, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you our guest host tonight. He is a certified dental technician and friend of ours, Leon Hermanides. I hope I'm getting that right. So Leon is a certified dental technician and founder of Proteo Dental Studio. He guides every aspect of the services at Proteo, establishing the standard of care, the performance protocols, and customer service. He's published major articles on implants and comprehensive restorative rehabilitation in both clinical and technical journals. In addition, he's lectured throughout the U.S. and internationally on implant restorations, aesthetics, and restorative failures. Leon is a clinical instructor and scientific advisor at the prestigious Coy Center in Seattle, Washington, which allows him to work closely with dentists who strive for excellence and precision in their delivery of care. He's also served as president and member of the board of directors of the Washington State Dental Laboratory Association, as well as holding office in the National Association of Dental Laboratories and chairing the Foundation for Dental Technology. So, that's a mouthful. So we are so happy to have him. Alongside, we have a co-presenter, Dr. Cooch, who's joining the conversation. You guys may know him as the founder of Carifree. Dr. Cooch also has an impressive resume, I must say, and we're very lucky to have him as our resident caries risk management expert. He's fairly newly retired from private practice after 40-plus years of practicing here in Albany, Oregon. But we've managed to keep him pretty busy. So he continues publishing papers in journals. He acts also as a scientific advisor on dental caries for the Coy Center in Seattle. And he's a scientific reviewer for multiple journals, including JADA and Compendium and Inside Dentistry. So we have two really awesome presenters for tonight. And Dr. Cooch, I will let you say a few words before we hand it over to Leon.
Yeah, thank you, Kendall. And I'm just here, let me clarify, I'm just here for a little color commentary tonight. But I just want to say about Leon, that's an impressive resume, but if you know him as a person, that doesn't even begin to cover who he is. And I met Leon at the Coy Center almost 20 years ago, and I have to tell you that he's one of the most talented and humble dental laboratory technicians that I have ever met, and I've done so many cases with Leon over the years, and I have such great respect for him. So I am so honored to have him here tonight. And Kendall and I were talking like last year as we were laying out, well, who do we want to have, to provide for our tribe this year to present? And I thought, I really want to get Leon in because we always talk about caries risk management, and how do you get the patient healthy, and then kind of once you get there, you're on your own. And I thought, it's really the right time to bring Leon in to talk about, okay, so what do we do now? We got the patient healthy, they've got this complex restorative need. Where do we go from there? So Leon, I love you, man. It's yours.
Kim, thank you. That's a very gracious introduction from somebody who I hold in very high regard as well. So thank you very much. And thanks for the invitation. Obviously, it's really a pleasure to be here tonight. I'd also like to just reach out and say thank you to Kendall. She's been in regular contact with me for months, making sure that everything gets set up and runs smoothly. I mean, even, 20 minutes ago, she was redoing the upload to fix some slides. So honestly, great work. Thank you so much for all of what you did, Kendall.
Thank you.
So,
thank you, Leon. It's been a pleasure working with you, and I'm excited for tonight.
Great. So I'll just get started. So today we're going to look at some innovative ways that we've been managing patients with significant dental disabilities. And really what I want to show is how we plan, first of all, and then manage them back to health. And for different patients, back to dental health could be different for different people. So this is essentially customized or personalized, individualized care, dental care. And I knew I'd forget to click the first time. So, I believe the more accurate our diagnosis, the more efficiently and the more effectively we can treat people. It's no surprise that I hold Kim in such high regard because of the work that he's done in caries management has been so much more about the diagnosis. And, for me, the diagnosis, when it's accurate, allows us to treat somebody with a reasonable measure of efficiency. In other words, efficiency being how do we get somebody from a diagnosis to healthy and stable and then to a final delivery of care, and at a reasonable cost. Because essentially, for all of us, I don't think it matters what part of the market that you practice dentistry in. Bringing our skills to bear for more people is why we came here in the first place. That's what we want to do. That's what we've always wanted to do, is to leverage our services. And of course, the efficiency requires good decision-making from a diagnostic start point. And then when things aren't going right, it requires a quick course correction. So having a good diagnosis doesn't mean that you won't have problems. Having a good diagnosis may indicate where you will experience problems going forward. And so actually what we really need is a system to diagnose and treat people. And what you see here is the Coist Center system, starting with medical dental history, working to a diagnostic risk assessment, and then using their management protocols to find an effective way to treat somebody. This is a software solution. This is the Oryx software, which has been developed to utilize these protocols, and then shows you on the screen right now is the personalized patient risk assessment. So this is like a walkout statement for your patient. This is where the risks are. And then what I've really enjoyed about, what I've seen with Kim and his development with Carifree, this was the most recent form that I downloaded from your site. And again, just looking at risk assessment. And so what John Coist has said is that by systematically assessing patient risk, dentists also avoid consideration of treatments that might otherwise add risk to the overall health or oral health of their patients. And to me, that's really important, because what I find is without a clear and accurate diagnosis, we don't actually know if our treatment is going to negatively impact some other part of the patient's oral health. So this diagnosis and being consistent with how we do that has been a big change in dentistry. So Albert Einstein, when he said the significant problems we faced cannot be solved at the same level at which we created them, you know, for me, it always brings up the question, well, what are our problems? And honestly, our problems are good problems in that what we're facing now is that we have so much better understanding of all the systems that we're looking at, whether it is, you know, periodontal health, the caries, the entire caries systems, all of these parts of the system that we treat, we understand so much better, but what has it created is immense complexity. And so the idea that we have learned all these things, sometimes what's really hard to understand then is how do we now manage all of this complex information that we're seeing? And then what does it mean when I come to treat somebody? So I have this information, it is really complex, and then what do I do? So what we've done is develop, over the years, we've, you know, as with, I think, everybody, there are cases that you bump into along the way that you learn useful lessons from. And we're going to just run through some of these cases to get a sense of how exactly we've become adept at changing people's situations in a way that suits their lifestyle, that suits their idea of what their dental care should look like. The first case is a case, this is Laurel. I treated Laurel with Dr. Kim Larson way back in 2013, and the reason that I'm going to use Laurel tonight is actually twofold. First of all, Kim and I actually published Laurel in a couple of different journals, but for us, I've been in a study club with Kim Larson and a group of other dentists for many years, and we always found that the study club was a very, very good way to bounce ideas off each other and to completely develop our understanding of concepts that we were struggling with sort of in our offices on our own. And this case, when Kim and I were first talking about the case, one of the issues became, you know, what Laurel wanted was 28 teeth to be treated, but for most people to treat 28 teeth in one appointment, you know, in a few appointments, first appointment, prep and provisionalize, bite records, you know, all of those, that's a lot of dentistry and can be very unpredictable. Because if anyone's ever seated 28 teeth in one appointment, you know, it doesn't take more than a very slight mismount and your day gets really ugly really quickly. So what Kim and I had been talking about with Laurel was, well, how, if she wants to do it this way, how do we go ahead and manage this in an efficient way and deliver the predictability? And so we spent some time thinking about that, and what ended up happening was what you see kind of in the title of the article, was we started to really discriminate between the arches, thinking about the maxillary arch as our aesthetic arch, where we were going to deliver what the patient wanted to see, and then understanding that really the mandibular teeth just really had to fit that in a way that we didn't change the length beyond what should have been visible or in any way like that. So what we did was we worked out a way to treat Laurel that gave Kim 2 appointments, and essentially he had a seat the upper arch appointment and take bite records for the lower arch, and then to go ahead and to seat the lower arch and have a way of predictably equilibrating the teeth into position. So obviously, it started with a risk assessment. This is the personalized risk assessment that Kim did in 2013, I think it was. And, you know, when you look at Laurel's periodontal health, she had low risk, fairly good prognosis, and that wasn't a big concern. What Kim was more concerned about at the time was that her biomechanical risk was actually higher in the red. She had a high biomechanical risk. And for those of you that are familiar with the CRA way of diagnosing caries, so what Kim found was he had a high biofilm challenge. When he used the meter, she had a high reading. The disease wasn't expressed in the teeth at that time, but she also had an additional risk factor that she was a frequent eater. She snacked multiple times during the day. So this had to come back into the treatment plan as we went forward. She had questionable restorations, structural compromises, and there was some erosion on the teeth. And here, when you look at the occlusal views of the teeth, you can see there's evidence of all of these clinical findings. Her functional diagnosis was considered occlusal dysfunction, and you know that comes back to the medical dental history and some of the questions that we use to assess those things. That risk assessment was a moderate risk and a fair prognosis. For Laurel's diagnostic opinion for her dentifacial or her aesthetics, you can see on the right, on the top on the right, that she definitely wanted a color change. We wanted to change the maxillary incisal edge position, the maxillary occlusal plane, the mandibular incisal edge position, and the mandibular posterior occlusal plane. That's a lot of work. And to do it,
everything.
That's everything. That's the whole ball game in one case. And the real difficulty is that when you see all of that, I think to understand that there's an immense complexity that has to be simplified in a way that treats that predictably. And that's where we spend a lot of time with Laurel. And we spent a lot of time talking before he ever put a burr to the tooth. And you can see with there was some diastemas and rotations that we were going to correct. The dentifacial risk assessment is based on lips in repose and, the amount of tissue display above the teeth in a full smile or a Duchenne type smile. So you can see with Laurel, we'll come back to that. You can see with Laurel that she doesn't show a lot of her teeth, the tissue above her teeth in the smile. She doesn't have what's termed a gummy smile. So as we start this blueprint development, we have the diagnosis. Now we have to figure out where we're going to go. How do we put somebody back to this place where they're going to look good and we know that the teeth are going to last them a long time? So this slide here is developed from the COIS 10-step management protocol, and essentially the starting point for everything is the maxillary incisal edge position. And based on some research, that's cuspid in display in repose. So we would expect in repose to see 0 to 0.5 millimeters of cuspid display in the picture. The hard part about 0 to 0.5 is if you can't see it, you don't know it's there. So, you know, you can either use, there's different ways to measure that, but what we've found in practice that's the most effective is 0.5 to 1 millimeter of cuspid in display puts you right in the ballpark for a good display of the front teeth. So then we're going to look at the maxillary occlusal plane. Do we need it to be, is it canted? Is it inclined posterior to anterior? Then we're going to look at the mandibular incisal edge position based on tooth display. We don't want to show more lower incisal edge when we're done because obviously that's an aging strategy, and we don't, from my experience, people don't like to look older when they've finished than they did when they started. And then, of course, mandibular occlusal plane. The other thing that we're going to look at is the shape, rotation, and symmetry of the teeth. The shape, rotation, and symmetry, some of these things can impact things like your risk for peri-implant aesthetics, which John has published on as well. You know, square teeth, flat scallop, you have a much lower risk of showing proximal triangles when you finish with your single tooth anterior restorations. So your functional and therapeutic position of the mandible, how are you going to find it? The restoration design, are you going to do full coverage? Are you going to partial coverage? Where are you going to put your margins? Why are you going to put them there? And then your gingival enhancement concerns. Do you have symmetry? If you don't, does it matter if you have symmetry? And then, so what are you going to do to figure all those things out? This, for me, was one of the game-changing things that happened in my career. So at some point, we started looking at historic photos and trying to understand, as John put it, does your patient want the smile they used to have or the smile they never had? And why does it matter? And the reason that it matters is from what you can see here with Laurel, Laurel's just asking to have the tooth structure that has been removed through her life to be put back on so she looks how she did when she was young. And that is typically not the most difficult treatment. If somebody comes to you and says, no, I want the smile I never had, usually you're looking at more catastrophic treatments. You know, it may involve orthodontic surgery, it may involve clinical crown lengthening. But finding what that is, this is a great question to ask yourself. And being prepared, because being prepared is part of what makes this really effective. So here we take the photographs and we look for Laurel. So we're making some decisions about how long are the teeth, how much longer do we want the teeth, how are we going to take our bite records. You can see from the bottom right that this slide shows a coarse deprogrammer in place. That's how we found our therapeutic position of the mandible. So now we come to the wax up. So we've decided that 10.5 millimeter central looks good. So to start this wax up, we had a face bow and a bite record in a deprogram position. We put the model on the articulator, used this face bow system, the spatial plane analyzer, the coarse facial plane analyzer, and we set the platform based on how long we want that front tooth. And from there, we can wax the entire maxillary arch. And again, this in this case, it's somewhat simplified by the fact that we're doing 28 teeth, so we can modify accordingly. But now we have the anterior teeth where we want them and a flattened level occlusal plane. And here's test driving that flattened level occlusal plane. We have the upper and lower provisionals in at one time. And below that, you see the diagnostic wax up that we did. So for me, this case came out very well. It looks nice. Laura was really happy. And what made this a predictable treatment in the end for Kim was that we completely separated the upper and the lower arches. We made the upper arch and completed that, and he delivered that. He then had a new deprogrammer made. When the deprogrammer was made, he then put it in. She wore it for a week, came back, took bite records to the lower preps, and then we re-articulated the lower preps and then made that lower arch. When he delivered that case, those crowns just dropped in and he barely adjusted the occlusion. But he also had the deprogrammer there to make any changes to the occlusion he needed in a guided way. It wasn't just a random equilibration. And that was the big lesson that we learned with Laurel about predictability, was the more these strategies we could embrace to create this very seamless process, the more predictable, the more fun the dentistry became, and it's more profitable. There's no backwards and forwards. These cases, this was literally, you know, seat the upper arch and then seat the lower arch.
And I think that's a huge key, Leon, you know, not having to go backwards on a case, because as soon as you do that, economically, you're losing money, right?
That's right. Absolutely. And I think, you know, I remember seeing Paul Homily present years ago, and Paul was saying that what a lot of people don't realize is that when they do more than 3 teeth in a case, the bill looks bigger, but they make less profit. And it's not about, you know, how long it takes you to prepare a tooth or something. It's about the management of the entire process. And I think that's part of it, right? So it's the management of the process, and then something goes wrong. And now what do you do? How do you recover? And I think that made a big impact for me and had a lot to do with how we kind of went forward on some of these things.
Yeah. That's a beautiful case, Leon.
Thank you. Thank you.
And of course, you had Kim Larson as one of the most talented prosthodontists I've ever met as well. So,
you know, and so detail-oriented and so he's just, it was truly a collaborative case. You know, we worked on it together. It's a real pleasure to work with Kim. I love it. I really do.
Yeah.
And I know he's a good friend of yours too, so that helps. So, so the next case we're going to get to is what has been the evolution since 2014 in how we do these cases now, and what have we created, or what systems have we begun to strategize to make this more predictable? Or even how can we make this more accessible by not having you treat 28 teeth at one time? So as you can see, this is erosion. These teeth have had significant acid insult, and you know, I think it's clear to most people what the etiology of this erosion is. And you can see from the teeth, there's very little towards the back of the mouth and a lot more in the front. And the question now is, how do we go forward to bring her back to a place that she is both aesthetically stable and happy, but functionally stable and happy too? So I went backwards because what's important to see is the MIP photograph on the left is true MIP. This is all her teeth together in her mouth, and you can see that there's an anterior space there that exists just because that's how far the teeth have eroded. The picture on the right is actually the printed models, and you can see that that anterior opening is a little bit wider. That is just showing the deprogrammed position of this mandible. And so when the teeth are no longer in contact at the back, but we had decided this was more or less the vertical that we were going to restore her to. And you'll see there's some compromises along the way that we now have to adapt to. So there's the erosion. And so we're treating this exactly the same way, just using some different tools. These days, all of our wax-ups are done virtually. And so you can see we set the upper arch based on tooth and display, you know, how much of the front teeth show in the smile. So that crosshairs kind of gives me my vertical reference. My midline has to be straight up and down. My horizontal reference, this is where we're going to bring the teeth down to. And there you can see the top two images are the virtual representations, and then now we've made a physical model, we've printed the model, and put that on the articulator to verify that what we thought we were doing is truly what we've done. And at this point, we've only treated the upper, but you can see the vertical is the same as it was in that initial picture without the wax up, the models with the open anteriors. You can see we've made some inroads here into closing down that anterior space just by the length that was added to the front teeth, but this would continue to be an issue, and I'll address that shortly. So here gives you a very good idea of where we started. The middle picture is just the upper arch waxed, and then the picture on the far right is both arches with all the teeth waxed. Now, waxed because I can't lose the idea that we used to put wax on teeth. It's not wax, it's just made, right? We've done this in a virtual way.
You virtually waxed them.
We virtually waxed it, yeah. It doesn't have the same impact, but we'll go with that. So now you can see this is our plan. So at this point, it's just a plan. Now, I saw there was, the question is how much more, what more can we do to the teeth to put them in a favorable position? Well, it gets really tricky because anything that we did on the upper that lengthened the teeth would have opened the vertical more, which would have actually made the lower teeth look longer. Now, opening the vertical would also have had the impact of bringing the lower incisors back further behind the upper incisors. But again, the decision has to be, if I see the lower incisors longer when I'm done than when I started, and visually that doesn't look right, and I'll show you what I mean here. If you look at the photograph on the top left, you can see the lower incisors already at the lip line. If I add too much to those incisors, she's going to start aging, and that's not what she wants to do. So monitoring the vertical, how much you can open and close, becomes a significant issue.
Leon, did you have historical photos on her?
I did not on this. But
I mean, it would be interesting to see what they look like, before. But because I totally follow where you're going with the aging and the lengthening, of the incisor, using the incisal edge of those mandibular incisors, and somewhere there you have to compromise between the length of the maxillary teeth and the length of the mandibular teeth and the display to close the space and yet make I guess hit the optimum moment of deliciousness, I guess, if you, right?
And so the real tricky part is that it's a window, not a place. So, and by that what I mean is there is some variability into where that all comes together, and you can give and take. It's just knowing where to compromise. What compromise is acceptable to you, right, or to the patient, and I think that's very, very hard for a lot of people to see. And I show this kind of series quite often because it's really hard to understand as I lengthen one arch what happens to the other arch. And then, like, you look at this and you think, okay, well, it looks a little prognathic, but opening it further would increase the lower tooth length, and I don't like that option very much. And it increases the lower tooth length because the upper teeth are in the right place.
Right.
And that becomes that kind of give and take, right? And it gets a little tricky to manage. And so it was, in fact, tricky to manage. What I'm showing here on the left side is one of the incredible things about doing these wax-ups virtually is any material that we add to the teeth, particularly in a situation like this that's mainly additive, we can then spit it out in some form. Here we have a milled PMMA provisional, and so if you go back to the original teeth, there was so much erosion. So to replace that missing tooth structure, we can now just mill out these PMMA restorations. They get bonded right on top of the teeth, and immediately you've sealed the dentin. So in one appointment, she went from, continuing to break down to cover the teeth. Now I'm going to even add to that. If you look at the digital model at the top there, it's also possible in one appointment to prep 6 teeth and put 2 posterior quadrants of these PMMAs on, and in one appointment you go from looking like she did coming in to somebody who's comfortable and stable, and she's going to get 6 new teeth. So there is an immense, just to me, the beauty of what we've been working on is I can take you in shorter sort of bursts of time and make you more comfortable. And when something's not looking right, we can go back and test it. And so if you look at the photograph here at the bottom, you can see there's still, oh, I didn't drag it in. You can see here there's still an anterior open bite here. So then the question is, what went wrong, if anything? Well, what's not as obvious is at this point here, those PMMAs were already seated on these back teeth. You can see right here just by the lengths. And her vertical had been opened up. And so now we're reaching that compromised position. So the provisionals are put in, the back teeth are stabilized with the PMMAs, and now the question is, what are we going to do about the opening? And can we do anything about the opening? So this is a case that's ongoing right now. If my memory serves me, we compromised, we brought some of the front teeth down, and when the lower front teeth were restored, that helped close the space. But it's the incredible thing about these procedures for me is that they're flexible. You can change it, you can adapt it, and you can constantly do things that minimize the impact at the end. So, for example, if you wanted to change all of the upper front teeth here, if I had done a wax-up, I would literally have to redo the whole wax-up. That's like hours and hours of time. If I take this virtual model now and tweak it and print a new model, that's not a big deal. That's, it's a fraction of the amount of time. And it's so much more predictable because I kept the starting point. Nothing else changed. And so that's where this is getting really, really, really useful. And you'll see some of that later on.
I mean, Leon, you can send the new set of temporaries to the dentist. He pulls those 6 off, puts the new ones on, literally in a 10-minute appointment, and now you've tried in that new incisal length position in the patient live just in a matter of minutes.
Yep, absolutely, right. It's not a difficult process. And in fact, I know that there's been some concern amongst people about these sort of occlusal, these provisional occlusal restorations popping off and things. And to me, it goes back to your diagnosis. First of all, if somebody's been hard on their back teeth all their life, sure, they're going to break those off. But that's another story. The good thing about it is that file, the little, these little restorations that you see here, it's essentially captured in a mill file. And all I have to do is say mill it, and it mills me another set of those. The wax up, I don't have to read you anything. We're at a point where in some of the patients where people are anticipating issues with, back teeth breaking off frequently, we'll send them 2 sets at the same time. And it's for a moderate cost. It's $25 a unit. I mean,
Right.
you know, so if you had 2 sets and something goes wrong, it's reversible. You grind them off, put the new ones on. So that's been a really interesting thing for us, because obviously one of the issues that made large-scale dentistry or you know, these larger comprehensive cases so expensive was your chair time and how much time it took at the chair managing people. I can hear Kim sighing, because I mean, it was a reality for everybody, right? It's not unique to anybody. It just is what it is.
Yep.
So what this is just to give you a very visual indication of when we do these virtual wax-ups. These are the 2 models that we send out. So it's the same wax-up, but if you look here, you'll see that there's show-through from the original dentition, right?
Right.
And then on this side is an ideal version of the teeth. So if you thought about it this way, if I was going to do a mock-up on a patient that hadn't been treated yet, I would use this one. And so we print both of these models for you. I would use this one because what is poking through here is existing tooth structure. So only additive material will go onto the teeth from this one, whereas this one is the one that you would make your provisionals from, right? After you've prepared the teeth, this is the one you would use. And that's the way the 2 models work. And it's really simple. We send them out in different colors. Confused. Because it's easy, you know, it's hard sometimes to see these things. And in the beginning, one of the challenges for people was, when you don't see wax on the model, how do I know what you did? Because the wax would show me what you did. So, you know, we've had to find these different ways of doing things to help people like get a metric on what this looks like. And actually, I'll show you in a slide coming up what we did for somebody as well. So this is how we are able to keep these systems ongoing and mobile, right? It's a very dynamic system. We can change it. We can adapt. We're constantly on the verge of doing something. You know, it's literally a phone call and I send it by FedEx and you have new teeth tomorrow. It's that easy. Although my team would kill me if they heard me say that. So I was told the other.
I do that all the time to the team. Carifree.
I have no computer skills with milling or anything like that. So when I say things, sometimes I can see the eye rolls happening behind me. So this is Ted, and Ted was treated by Dr. Chris Swanson, who's here in Bellevue, who's every bit as detail-oriented and skilled a clinician as Kim. And Ted is a case that Chris and I, it's actually going to be in the May edition of Compendium. So look out for the case as we go forward.
Congrats.
Thank you. So this case is, again, one of these cases that helped us, kind of helped inform what we were trying to do, because Ted is different in a completely, it's a different case altogether. And Ted's issue was his front teeth were broken down. He didn't like this gummy tooth display. So here's the gummy display. So high-risk aesthetic patient. And he wasn't prepared to do ortho. He wanted $1 million smile. He was adamant, no ortho, and I want to look like $1 million. So Chris and I went through all of the diagnostic opinion and did all of the protocols that it would take. And considering that he wasn't prepared to do ortho, we also had this additional sort of thing that we couldn't increase the risk, the structural integrity risk to the teeth, because of not doing ortho. So how do you then come back and do that? So we had a look at the case, and we did this virtual wax-up. And you can see from this overlay, it gets a little fuzzy over here. I get that it's a little tricky to see, but what you can see is there's the teeth, and the rest is just the additive wax. Well, additive virtual wax. So you can see, again, there's the teeth, there's the additive. One of the things that Ted said that he wanted was more tooth display, so we're adding horizontal volume on Ted as well. When Chris got the wax up back, he was having a hard time understanding where it was additive and what was poking through. And so what you can see here on the right is we just sent him this picture to kind of get a visual on what that looked like. On the lowers here, you can see the lower back teeth. You know, we were doing, again, 28 teeth, not an easy process. So now we get into a question that I get a lot is about the idea of this mock-up. Christian Coachman calls it his emotional mock-up. So one of the things that we've done in some of these cases is rather than going to the full upper arch and everything, is can we do just 6 front teeth, give you a sense of where we're going, and then once the patient's accepted treatment and, you know, put money up or however you manage that, can we then start taking all the records and everything that it takes to go the distance on a case like this? And honestly, the answer is yes, because once we have that digital file, once we've started working on that digital file, it's there. You know, we don't, well, unless your server crashes, then it's not there anymore.
And that's a bad day for everybody.
Yeah, that's just nobody's favorite day. But once you've done the work, the file is there. You can go back and reuse that file infinite amount of times, right? There's no problem with that.
Yeah.
But on Ted's case, what happened here was we decided we were doing some crown lengthening. We were adjusting the size and the position of the teeth, and basically it was all additive. And so this mock-up went right into Ted's mouth, and this picture is of the mock-up. I mean, Ted sees this, and he's in heaven. He's like, I want that, and I want it today. So
right.
This is a very emotional appointment for somebody like Ted, and from there, he went on to accept treatment and go through the whole thing. So one of the things that was determined was, you saw he had a lot of tissue display in his smile, was that we needed to take those crown margins apically to try to get them as close to the lip line as possible. So Ted goes through some clinical crown lengthening, and again, we're using that same file. So this is with some, you know, with the provisionals in, so that he can have the front. So the surgeon had a guide for the front teeth. He could do the clinical crown lengthening, and then came back and did a final set of provisionals before finishing the case. You can just see here the gums just look a little messy.
Right.
But now this guide, these, you know, every time it's just from a matrix of that final wax up, you're using the same thing every time. And if something along the way changed, we just change the file and print the model. It's really not difficult to do. So then we get the upper arch for Ted finished. And this is what that looks like. And you can see from the gummy smile to now having teeth that don't show, we don't show gum above the tooth margins. That was really, really good for him. But we still have to do the lower. And this is where it's always been so tricky. If we do both at once, how predictable is that? You know, I mean, I always think about it. If you put a human hair between your teeth, you can feel it. That's how, it doesn't take that much to be wrong. And this turns into the, you know, just a day that nobody enjoys, just grinding on porcelain. And especially, you know, this kind of case, the posteriors we manage with very thin porcelain onlays. You just can't sit there and grind on that all day. It just, nothing good comes of that. And then the easiest way to do it is now what we do. This is a huge improvement from when we did Laurel. When we send out this upper arch of crowns, along with the upper arch of crowns comes a deprogrammer. So you get this deprogrammer delivered with that upper arch. You put the upper arch in, put the deprogrammer in place, and then capture your record for the lower restorations. And when you now come back to deliver those lower restorations, you have this deprogrammer as a guide to your final equilibration. So we've taken an entire set of appointments off the table just by having this deprogrammer at delivery.
Yeah, we had a question a little bit earlier, Leon, on what does the Coist deprogrammer look like? And so, of course, you've got clear acrylic here on this one that you printed, but essentially it's a Hawley appliance with a little button in the front that just so you just have one point of occlusion on the mandibular, central incisor, which then you can slowly close and work down on your occlusion. So I hope everybody has an opportunity to see that, understand that that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's, by the way, Leon, that's brilliant.
Yeah, well, so this one is interesting. This is a printed deprogrammer, so you'll notice there's no clasps. All we've done is wrap this acrylic or this resin round behind the second molars, and that's how it's retained. The important thing, as Kim was saying, is that this is in the middle, and if you look here, that when this record is taken, that any posterior teeth are slightly separated. The reason the posterior teeth have to be separated is it's really easy when the jaws come together for the mandible to deflect off any posterior contacts. And so that deflection then just creates chaos when you come to seat these restorations. We don't do remounts. We don't do like any of these things that you have to do to manage poorly taken bites. I'm not joking when I say these go in in an hour. I mean, Kim, I think you've had that experience.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I would prefer you were standing around taking photos than grinding on my crowns. That's our goal.
Yeah, I prefer to be high-fiving with the patient in the mirror in his hand than be grinding on that porcelain.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, there's data that suggests the more you have to fuss with these, the worse the long-term prognosis is for the restoration anyway.
Yep.
So if it goes in and you spot it in with the brownie point, I did my job.
Yep.
So then we do the lower arch on Ted, and realistically, all that happened on this lower arch was 4 molar crowns, some direct bonding on the bicuspids, and the anteriors had some direct bonding as well. And to give you a sense of what that change looks like, you can see the alteration in vertical dimension here, right? The horizontal overlap of the dentition. You can see that the teeth fill the space better. He was concerned about the proportion of the teeth. You can see that's been improved. And when you look at Ted's smile, you can see there's a big change for him. And he honestly, he's ecstatic. He's absolutely ecstatic. And I think that's a good result.
Oh, that's a beautiful result, yeah.
And the really, in the same way that Laurel was a great case for me, this is a great case because it was absolutely side-by-side learning. Chris and I sat down before we started. We were in contact all the way through. And then when you see a case come out like this, it really kind of makes you feel good. It makes you, there's an achievement in that.
Ah, yeah.
So the thing that really, to me, tells me when a system is working is when you can use it for multiple applications and it works exactly the same way. And so this is a great case because I don't do removables. My father was a removable technician. I don't need to do that. But we're doing, in this case, this is a immediate denture, and the lab work was done by Ruth Book, who is an excellent removable technician. But it's the same concept. You can see, if you saw my wax up on Laurel and you see how Ruth set these teeth, it's exactly the same, right? So much of what we do in Crown and Bridge was informed by how we learned to do aesthetics and dentures. But if we're going to do an upper arch to flatten level, what happens if he has a rickety old lower? And what happens is we just design some PMMA overlays for those lower posterior teeth, put them right on top. In one appointment, he gets a new upper arch and a new occlusion in one appointment. Now, obviously, it's an immediate denture, so there's the changes and all of those things are going to go on. But I would anticipate somebody in this situation would need a lot less adjustment to their denture for occlusal issues throughout the course of their treatment. So I know we're getting close to the end. Again, I'm always looking for consistent logic. How do these things carry across multiple patients? And if the logic is consistent, then it holds. So this is a lady who came to see a dentist that I work for who had just had this upper arch treated by someone, and she was in a lot of discomfort. She was in a lot of occlusal discomfort. Now, I know that we started talking about, very broken down dentition. Sometimes the dental disability isn't just the teeth. It can be structural. She was having joint concerns, things like that. And so what we did was, she was not about to redo this upper arch. That was not high on her list of priorities. But when she was deprogrammed using this deprogrammed device, so this is more of a sort of typical Coist deprogrammer with a labial bow. There'll be the platform behind these front teeth. Her lower jaw came forward, and what happened was there was space between the back teeth. What we did here was we looked at her, and if you remember all the way back in the beginning, we talked about step 1 being maxillary incisal edge position, step 2 maxillary occlusal plane, step 3 mandibular incisal edge, step 4 mandibular occlusal plane. If you just kind of go through that sequence in your head, you can see that on this side, she was slightly short in these teeth, so 12 and 13, and slightly short around 28, 29, 30. So when we looked at opening her up a little and filling in the missing space, rather than just adding it to one arch, here we selectively added. So we added the posterior PMMAs on this side, and then some posterior PMMAs on that side. And this was done in, I think, 2016. We just finished the case, literally just finished the case. So she had these in for 3 or 4 years before we ever got to finally restore. Wow. So sometimes just getting people comfortable and stable builds the trust, and then they'll come back and say, okay, I'm ready, let's do all the teeth. And what you see here is the day of the seat appointment and what it looks like at the end. However, I'm tired of everybody telling me everything goes well, because it doesn't go well always for me. And what I really like is, I really like having, when I have records that are consistent through the process, when something's not quite right or something happens, I can go back and I can figure out what happened. So if you look at the top left, you'll see this is our diagnostic wax-up. That's what it looks like. But look what happened when the provisionals were made. So obviously something happened, right?
Right.
It's not a judgment. It happens. You know, I tell people the reason that I like being a technician is because, you know, when I'm working on something, it's not squirming around or going to the bathroom. It's kind of stone. It just stays there. And I think this is kind of one of those situations. So there, something went wrong. Who knows? I don't really even care why. All I want to know is how do I get back to where I started? And this here is a representation. If you look at the blue, that is a model of this provisional. But the underlying structure, the gold, the buff color under there, that is from our original diagnostic wax-up, and that's actually the final restorations wax-up. Look at the difference in the midline here. I mean, when I looked at this midline, it's obvious. Something happened, right? The matrix got twisted, it got warped, whatever. But we fixed it. And the ability to find these problems and fix them before we get to the end here and having that kind of discrepancy, I think that's huge. And this case went in, and it's not a disaster. It's, oh, look, you know, this is fantastic. I love this. We ended up doing a little bit of adjustment to the length on this side, but you know what? I don't think it was a big deal. She wasn't upset. It's all done and dusted, and she was happy and healthy. I'm going to finish out with this case, and this is kind of one of these cases when you recommend treatment, everything, and somebody says yes. And so this is a really good friend of mine, fantastic dentist, Phil Timmons, and Phil just happened to have somebody who said yes to everything. So she went through ortho. He mocked up the teeth as he was going through the ortho so he could see what was happening. And then he came along, he prepped the teeth, takes the shade photos, all of those things. And this is the lab work and how we do it. You can see here the crowns are being built up. We use this platform as a guide for the length of the front teeth. Here you can see the front teeth, the cuspids, and the first bias all on that platform. That's flat and level. When you look here, you can see the normal anatomical form on the linguals of these, or palatals of these front teeth, to make sure that she has the space to chew and function. And that's kind of the progression of what she looked like. So that's what she looked like when she came in. That's those upper teeth and the smile. And so that's what's possible. And, you know, I know that I've gone a few minutes over, but what I really want to just say thank you. I love, this is what I'm passionate about, how we can do these things for people, and I really appreciate this opportunity. So thank you, Kim. And I'll take any and all questions.
Go ahead. Yeah, I just have to say, Leon, you never disappoint me. That's breathtaking. I mean, I think the predictability, the simplicity, once you have the right diagnosis, then it creates the simplicity, and certainly the whole digital technology has changed our world so dramatically and simplified it in some degree to be able to go to do these large cases, have them go fairly smoothly and predictably kind of in the end that it's just, you know, we live in such an incredible time. I mean, right now we're living in a very incredible time, like these weeks and months right at the moment. But when I look at the technology we have, the materials we have, the level of knowledge we have about the diseases and function I mean, dentistry is, we've never had a better opportunity to do something for patients and do it predictably and comfortably. So it's, you know, my hat's off to you, Leon.
Thank you. And, you know, I think like a case like this, I show these 8 front teeth, but, you know, it took her 3 years to finish out the dentistry. She still came back and did back teeth. And I think not only does the predictability bring efficiency and allows us to treat more people, but so does the ability to break these cases up and to manage them with systems like the you know, milled posterior onlays and things like that.
I mean, being able to, then you can segment the treatment into like quadrants or, you know, sextants, and then it makes it, you know, prepping 28 teeth, which I think we've probably all done, is a nightmare, literally. It's physically hard on you and the patient, but prepping 3 or 4 teeth at a time is like easy. Right? So that significantly changes, you know, the whole equation here for all of us, you know, for you, for me, and also for the patient. Being able to sit down and just have a quadrant done rather than having 28 teeth done, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, it's just incredible, you know, when you look at, I don't know, it's almost, I kind of took that memory and pushed it away, because the amount of times that we did 28 teeth, you know, in the past, and then had to manage all the things that come up with that, and you know, you're taking bite records on patients that have been in the chair for 9 hours, and you know, all of those things, and to think that, you know, we can do it so much more predictably, it didn't seem possible like back then, right? We were kind of programmed that you had to do it all at once. And
well,
so
we really didn't have the digital. We didn't have the digital reference and the records that we could segment things. So you really had to get it all at one time, right? You had to get that entire arch, all your bite records, your impression, everything all at one time. And that is just so hard on you know, on everybody, you know. So this
when you use those.
What's that?
Sorry, when you use those PMMA onlays and you get somebody equilibrated, the bite records are just MIP bite records. You're not having to manage somebody into a deprogrammed position for every single bite record. When they're comfortable and stable, you're done. It's just bite records like you're normally taking.
And then it's predictable. You know, I mean, they don't have to wear a night guard to keep from breaking the porcelain.
No.
Right? If you have to wear a night guard to keep from breaking the porcelain is in the wrong place. Like here's a big clue.
Yeah, right. And that, you know, again, it's not to say that, you know, I've never had porcelain fractures. The one thing that I would say is the thing about a risk assessment is if the negative outcome doesn't align with what you diagnosed the patient with, then you got something wrong, right? You have to go back to the beginning. Don't think that just, it was Emax, I'm going to put zirconia in now and everything will be safe. No, it won't. Something else is going to break. How many times
I won't say, and Leon, I won't say that I've ever had porcelain fractures, but I have had some useful lessons.
Yeah.
I love the way I love your phrase. I'm going to steal that. Oh, God.
Yeah. So I mean, it's great, and thank you.
We've got Kendall for a couple of questions here.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so we had quite a few questions coming in, so thank you to everyone that is participating with us. Just so you know, if we don't get to your questions right now, we will have Leon follow up with you, so we'll make sure that we get answers to all of the questions this week. The first one, Leon, that I wanted you to talk about, Cynthia had asked, what materials are the crowns?
So if I started, they're all different materials. This final set of crowns is Emax, actually. Yeah, these ones were Emacs. Ted's were zirconia. I think those were the only treated cases. Let me go. Laurel, right in the beginning, was actually an interesting one because we were still doing PFMs, and so hers was a mixture of Emacs and PFMs. These days I would do Emacs and zirconia crowns without much issue.
Okay. And another one that came in, Yatin asked, please elaborate on the 0.5 to 1 millimeter display of the cuspid concept.
So, for the life of me, Kim, you're going to have to help me on this. What?
Okay. So that comes.
The really famous guy that lectured on implants that passed away. His name just escapes me today. German guy.
Oh. Are you talking about, oh, geez. Now I'm having a senior moment.
Yeah.
I had one of those earlier today.
Yeah. Okay. But I'll explain.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Are you talking about Branimar?
No, the other, Mish, Carl Mish.
Yeah.
Sorry, shouldn't have clapped.
Yeah.
Carl Mish.
Yeah.
Carl Mish did a study looking at, what he wanted to know was what was the most predictable way to measure the display of the front teeth to get an idea of how short or tall, those teeth had to be to get them into a good position in the upper arch. And what Carl said was when he looked at, in terms of, because we used to use the central incisors, 1 to 2 millimeters of central incisor. And what he said was the shape of the lip could change that cuspid display, or that amount of display, and still have too much variability. And he found when you went to the cuspid and measured the cuspid display when, the lips are in repose, that 0 to 0.5 millimeter was about average and would give you a really good, solid number to base your decisions on. But again, the problem for me, because I work remotely, with photographs and things, is that the 0 to 0.5 is difficult to see, so 0.5 to 1 is more easily visible for me.
Right, and that's really about, and to answer that question a little further, and then that really comes down to the bell curve.
Yeah.
And so what's considered quote unquote normal, and so that's the 0 to -0.5 or -1. I'm with you, Lan. I'd be in the 0 to -1 millimeter on the cuspid display. And so that, if we know that that's the center of the bell curve, that's what's going to look most normal when we finish the case. If you make it, and the standard deviation on length of teeth is fairly narrow. I mean, you make them a millimeter longer or a millimeter shorter, and now you're 2 standard deviations from the mean on human teeth. And so then they look like they're a different species, like right away. I mean, you make these things 2 millimeters longer or shorter, and you're way out on the bell curve. So that whole concept is, how do we make everything closest to the center of the bell curve so that looks most normal, so that we have the best acceptable, I guess, aesthetic outcome, that it looks right, and it looks right in the face of the patient. So that's
exactly where I was going to go. It looks right in the face, and why I went back is just to look at her face and look at the teeth. Being in dentistry, we all like to see things close up with our microscopes and our loupes and stuff, but what counts to her is what she looks like in that photograph right there.
Right, exactly.
And having a reference means I'm not going to deviate too far from making her look like that. So that's totally what I mean.
Great question. Any more? Another question? We got time for one more question, Kendall.
Yeah, for sure. So there was a question earlier, and I believe it was Dr. Robitaro's case. I think it was number 2. And Suzanne had a question. She said, seems to be an end-to-end bite. Can you talk about the long-term effects?
So, you know, so there's many different ways to address this. I would say that one of the things that I've learned from John Coyce that's really the most important thing to me is that, or the most important lesson that I've learned about occlusion is it's not what it looks like, it's how it works. And so
yeah.
The challenge with the end-to-end is often, does it look normal for that person, or is it comfortable? The challenge really is she going to break the front teeth I just put in there? That's really the issue. So the end-to-end in itself isn't an issue. What I have to do, though, is make sure if it's end-to-end that I'm not putting the front teeth in the way so that there's space for them to chew. That's really how I see it. You know, our concept is to keep those lower front teeth behind the upper front teeth as much as we can. You know, I think in a way that end-to-end bite has less risk than a bite that's more like TED, which is very vertically overlapped.
Oh, yeah.
Very vertically overlapped. Now the front teeth are in the way, and you can't get away, and you get more friction, more destruction to the front teeth. And honestly, from a ceramist's point of view, when I see cases like TED, I'm thinking, oh, you're going to break my front teeth, because I own them now, right?
Right.
So that's where I get a little bit wary. So I'm not concerned about end-to-end in terms of what will it do. I'm concerned about the risk to the crowns I just made, but that can be mitigated by, you know, somebody who will, so the typical protocol that people are using at the Coyce Center to make space for those front teeth, sit the patient up, take the 200 micron blue horseshoe paper and have them chew on that paper, not outside, you know, not go left lateral, right lateral, but to actually chew and to take the blue streaks off the front teeth. And that gets them, for the most part, out of the way of that chewing stroke.
Yep.
I hope that
Excellent.
was...
Okay. I feel bad cutting us off because I think that our attendees could be on with us for hours tonight picking your brain, Leon. So thank you so much. This has been really, really wonderful. We've had lots of good feedback. Thank you to all of our attendees. I'm going to switch the layout now. I'm going to switch the screen so you guys will see that change on your end. And there's a few things that I want to point out here and a few announcements to make. Again, if we didn't get to answer your question on the program tonight, we will be forwarding all of that to Leon so that he can follow up with you guys personally, make sure that he gets your questions answered. We will be sharing the recording of the webinar this week, so be on the lookout for more emails to come from us. That will also have your CE information in there as well, so you can get your CE credits for tonight. Leon has made available a copy of his slides, which you can find in the bottom middle of your screen. I know there's a lot of boxes going on here, but there is a Files to Download box, and it says PowerPoint Notes. So feel free to download those right now if you'd like. This will be given to you in the recording. That file will stay live in the recording, so if you don't get to download it tonight, you'll still have it in the recording as well. If you would like to reach out to Leon, we have put his contact information at the top left-hand corner of your screen, so please take a snapshot of it. If you'd like to reach out to him directly, he has made himself available, so please feel free to do that. And then last but not least, so our team here at Carifree, we understand how unique and tough of a time we are all going through right now. So again, thank you all for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. I see a lot of familiar names on the list, and your consistent support of these webinars that we run is absolutely felt and appreciated. So as we move forward over the next few weeks, we want to invite all of you to join us for a virtual dental conference that we're going to be launching this coming Monday, April 6th. So we're going to be running courses live every day at 11 a.m. Pacific time, and they'll continue throughout the month of April. We'll do them into the first week of May, so please join us if you can. We have many incredible speakers lined up, and we can't wait to share it with all of you. So thank you again for attending tonight. Thank you, Leon. Also, Dr. Cooch, we wouldn't be able to provide these courses without you guys and without our attendees. So that takes care of the long list on my end. Leon and Dr. Cooch, do you guys have any last-minute thoughts?
No, I just, like Kim said, I think this is exciting. We have opportunities that weren't really there before to make this accessible for more people, and that's what gives me the most pleasure.
Yep, and thank you, Leon, for being on tonight, and just thank you for everybody that attended.
Yeah.
We're always so humbled by you choosing to spend your time with us, and I'm really excited about the virtual dental conference. We've got an amazing lineup of speakers. I know Kendall and I are going to do a live kind of introduction tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock on that link there that's pulled up on your screen. We've got some amazing speakers on a wide variety of topics, and we thought I had like 6 dental conferences I was going to attend and speak at in the next 6 weeks that have all been canceled, and I thought, we've got all this free time. Let's get some CE and let's have a virtual dental conference if we can't have a real one. And our team is just, Kendall and Laura, you guys have done an amazing job putting this together, and I've been overwhelmed by the response from speakers wanting to participate. So please, if you get an opportunity, have your team, they're free, and you can get CE credit for them, and I'm really excited about that. So Kendall, thank you for putting this together,
Cool.
And we'll be talking tomorrow. Leon, I'll be talking to you soon.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.